They say $10 can't buy much anymore. Maybe a meal, maybe half a tank of gas. But on a Tuesday morning in late autumn, with my 7-year-old daughter sleeping in the back of our rusted Civic, $10 bought us something I didn't even know we needed. A chance. The shed appeared in a county auction listing, as is no warranty, buyer removes, buried between repossessed boats and storage unit contents. 20 by 16 feet of corrugated metal and rotting pine, perched on a quarter-acre lot so overgrown the assessor's photo barely showed the structure. Minimum bid, $5. I bid $10 to make sure no one outbid me in the final seconds. When the confirmation email arrived, I stared at my phone screen in the grocery store parking lot where we'd spent the night, and felt something I hadn't felt in 8 months. A roof, even a terrible one. The property sat 3 miles outside Bridgeport, down a gravel road that had surrendered to weeds. The shed leaned left, rust blooming across its walls like dried blood. One corner had collapsed entirely, exposing rotted floor joists, but it had 4 walls. It had a door, and it was ours. When Emma asked if this was our new house, I told her it was an adventure. She looked at the hole in the roof and asked if adventures were supposed to leak. I said the best ones always did. What I didn't know, what I couldn't have known while sweeping mouse droppings from the corners and nailing a tarp over that gaping roof, was that this $10 gamble contained a story written in floorboards and hidden papers, a legacy someone had buried in plain sight, and a truth that would bring us home in ways I'd stopped believing possible. Chapter 1. The last $10. The transaction completed at 9:47 a.m. By 10:15 we'd driven past the property twice before I believed the address was real. The gravel drive disappeared into blackberry vines so thick they formed a tunnel. I parked on the roadside, told Emma to stay in the car, and pushed through. The shed emerged gradually. Metal walls streaked orange-brown, a gambrel roof sagging like a broken spine, windows either boarded or shattered. Grass reached the sills. An oak had dropped a major limb across one corner, crushing the structure from ridgeline to foundation. I circled twice, documenting the disaster on my phone's dying battery. The door, a plywood replacement with a combination lock, opened on the second yank. Inside smelled of wet cardboard and decades-old motor oil. Light entered through rust holes like stars in a planetarium ceiling. The floor, surprisingly solid in most places, showed evidence of careful construction. Tongue and groove pine boards, hand-fitted. Someone had built this to last. I called Emma in. She stepped through brambles with her backpack clutched against her chest, the one containing everything we owned that mattered. Her stuffed rabbit, my late wife's wedding ring, 3 photographs, Emma's birth certificate. "It's big," she said, voice echoing off metal. "Bigger than the car." She walked to the center, testing floorboards with careful steps. "Does it have a bathroom?" "Not yet." I pointed to the overgrown corner. "But there's an old outhouse back there, like in pioneer times?" "Exactly like that." She absorbed this, then nodded with 7-year-old pragmatism. "Okay, can I pick my room?" I almost laughed. Almost. "Sure, kiddo. Anywhere that doesn't have a hole." She chose the northwest corner, furthest from the collapsed section, where afternoon sun would pour through a gap in the boards. She set her backpack down like a claim marker. I began sweeping with a broom I'd found leaning against the wall. Ancient bristles, solid handle. The previous owner's debris told fragmented stories. Rusted coffee cans filled with bent nails, a 1987 Farm Bureau calendar, oil-stained rags, a rotary phone with a severed cord. Beneath years of dust, I found a workbench built into the eastern wall, its surface scarred by saw marks and oil stains. "Dad," Emma's voice carried a strange note. "There's something here." She knelt near her chosen corner, fingers tracing a seam in the floorboards. Not damage, an intentional cut. A rectangular outline 3 feet by 2, with a small notch carved into one edge. I knelt beside her. The boards looked identical to the rest of the floor, but when I pressed the notch, the section lifted slightly on hidden hinges. "Is it a secret door?" Emma whispered. "Looks like it." My hands shook as I lifted. The panel rose smoothly, revealing a shallow cavity lined with cedar planks. Inside, wrapped in canvas that had somehow stayed dry, a mason jar containing rolled papers, a small metal box, and a leather-bound ledger with water stains blooming across its cover. Emma reached for the jar. I caught her wrist gently. "Let's be careful, these might be important." Important how? I didn't know. But something in that careful cedar lining, the canvas wrapping, the deliberate concealment. Someone had buried this with purpose. Someone who'd built a shed to last and hidden something they wanted found. Eventually, we lifted the mason jar together. Through the glass, I could see papers covered in handwritten text and what looked like hand-drawn diagrams. The metal box, no bigger than a paperback book, had no lock but felt heavy. The ledger's spine cracked when I touched it. "What do they say?" Emma asked. "I don't know yet." I glanced at the failing light through rust holes. "But I think we just found our first real clue about who built our new house." That night we slept on the floor with our sleeping bags, using the canvas as a ground cloth. Rain began around midnight, drumming on metal, and finding every hole I hadn't covered. I lay awake listening to water drip into the bucket I'd placed beneath the worst spot, and thought about the person who'd built tongue-and-groove flooring in a shed, who'd carved a secret space and filled it with papers they believed mattered. Tomorrow, we'd read them. Tonight we had a roof, even one that leaked. Chapter 2. Staying means. Everything dawn came through. Rust holes like a constellation descending. I woke to Emma sitting cross-legged beside the secret compartment, the mason jar cradled in her lap. She hadn't opened it. "Can we look now?" she asked. I pulled myself upright, back aching from the hard floor. "Let's see what we've got." The jar's lid resisted, rust-frozen, until I wrapped a rag around it and twisted hard. The seal broke with a pop that echoed off metal walls. The papers inside had been rolled tight and bound with twine that fell apart when I touched it. 3 documents. The first, a hand-drawn property map dated June 1983 showing the quarter-acre lot, the shed's footprint, water lines, electrical service from the road, and a notation in the margin. Septic approved 6/12/83, J. Welker, County. The second, a receipt from Bridgeport Hardware, $247.83 for lumber, screws, and roofing panels, dated July 1983. The third, a letter, 2 pages, written in careful cursive. "To whoever finds this, if you're reading, it means my time ran out before I could finish what I started. This shed was supposed to become a workshop, then a cottage, then a real house. Life had other plans. The foundation is solid. I dug it myself, 4 feet down, below frost line. The floor is yellow pine, salvaged from the old Morrison place when they tore it down. The walls are steel siding over 2x4s on 16-inch centers. You could add insulation between those studs easy enough. There's a water line capped under the northeast corner, 12 feet down, tied into county main. There's a septic field approved but never completed. Plans are with the courthouse under my name. Morris Welker, parcel 1904-227. I built this hoping my daughter would come home. She never did, but maybe someone needs it like I needed a second chance. Maybe that someone is you. The oak outside drops acorns every fall. Plant them. Something should grow here. M.W., November 1989. I read it twice. Emma watched my face. "What does it mean?" she asked. "It means..." I folded the letter carefully. "It means someone wanted this place to become a home, and maybe we're the ones who can finish it. Can we stay? Really stay?" The question hit differently than it would have a month ago, a year ago. We'd been staying places for 8 months. Parking lots, shelters that turned us away, the far corners of rest stops, my sister's couch until her boyfriend made it clear we weren't welcome. Staying meant permanence. Staying meant fighting for something. "We can try," I said, "but it won't be easy. Easier than the car." She wasn't wrong. I opened the metal box next. Inside, $127 in weathered bills, a social security card for Morris Welker, and a small photograph. A man in his 50s standing beside this shed in better days. Walls straight, roof intact. He looked proud. He looked hopeful. The ledger proved to be a detailed record. Every board purchased, every hour worked, expenses tracked to the penny. Notes about winter delays and summer progress. Morris Welker had documented his dream meticulously. He'd gotten as far as the shell, walls, roof, floor, before something stopped him. The entries ended in December 1989. "I wonder what happened to him," Emma said quietly. "I don't know. But he left us a map." I held up the property diagram. "And maybe we can finish what he started." We spent the morning clearing debris and assessing damage. The collapsed corner required major work, but the rest of the structure proved sounder than it looked. The workbench held salvageable tools, a handsaw with surface rust, a plane that needed sharpening, 3 hammerheads without handles. In a corner, wrapped in plastic, I found a box of roofing screws and a bundle of steel patches. By noon, I'd made a list. Immediate needs, roof patches, floor repairs, medium-term goals, insulation, functional windows, long-term dreams, running water, electricity, actual walls inside. Each category looked impossible, until I remembered we'd started with $10 and already owned more than we'd owned in months. Emma organized her corner, using cardboard boxes as furniture. She arranged her rabbit on a makeshift shelf, positioned her sleeping bag like a proper bed, and declared her room complete. Through the gaps in the wall, afternoon light illuminated dust motes like snow. "Dad?" She stood in her doorway. The imaginary one, anyway. "Are you going to get your own room?" "Eventually. For now, I'm good out here. You should take the corner by the door, so you can hear if anyone comes." 7 years old and already understanding we weren't safe yet. I moved my sleeping bag. That evening, as gray light faded, I discovered Morris Welker's property map included something else. A notation near the property line, small and cryptic. Survey marker, Corner, 6, rebar. I didn't know what it meant, but I filed it away. Every detail mattered now. If you're enjoying this journey so far, tell us in the comments where in the world you're watching from. Chapter 3. Evidence in the Walls. The county courthouse opened at 9. I left Emma with strict instructions: stay inside, don't open the door, and drove our wheezing Civic into Bridgeport proper. The tax assessor's office occupied a basement corridor that smelled like old paper and government efficiency. "Parcel 19, Air 4227, I told the clerk, a woman in her 60s with reading glasses on a beaded chain. She typed slowly, then frowned. "Morris Welker? That's the previous owner. I bought it at auction." "Honey, this property hasn't been properly assessed since 1991. You're looking at 34 years of back taxes, interest, and penalties." She turned the monitor toward me. The number made my stomach drop. $8,347. There must be a mistake. "No mistake. Welker died in 92. No heirs came forward. Property went into tax limbo." She peered at me over her glasses. "You bought this at auction?" "County online auction. Last week." She typed again. "That auction cleared the tax lien. You're in the clear, for now. But you've got annual property tax starting next year, and this lot's zoned agricultural residential. If you're planning to live there, you'll need permits for habitation, septic, electrical, inspection. How much for permits? Depends what you're doing. Basic habitation permit for that size structure may be $1,200, but you'll need licensed contractors for septic and electrical before the inspector signs off." She softened slightly. "Look, I remember Morris Welker. Good man. Broke his heart when his daughter didn't come back from California. He worked on that shed every weekend for years." She pulled out a form. "If you're serious about finishing what he started, file for a hardship deferral on the permit fees. Won't eliminate them, but it'll buy you time." I took the form with hands that trembled. Time. That's all we needed. Time and a chance to prove we could do this. Back at the shed, Emma had made progress. She'd swept her entire corner, stacked our food supplies on the workbench, and arranged river stones she'd found outside into a border around her sleeping area. "Look," she said, pointing to the collapsed corner. "I found more stuff." She'd been digging through debris while I was gone, carefully, like I'd taught her. Among splintered boards and soggy insulation, she'd uncovered a cigar box containing photographs. Morris Welker, with a teenage girl, presumably his daughter. Morris framing walls. Morris standing beside a surveyor's tripod. And one photograph that stopped me cold. This shed, completed with vinyl siding, proper shingles, and a small covered porch. "He finished it," Emma said. "Or he was going to. Look at the date. Stamped on the back, October 1990. This might be a mock-up, a plan, or it's what he wanted it to look like." She held the photo like a treasure map. "We could make it look like this. Could we?" The photograph showed a structure worth living in. Modest but dignified. Windows that closed, a door that fit. Morris had envisioned transformation. He'd just run out of time. I found his survey notes in the ledger that afternoon, cross-referencing the property map. The rebar marker mentioned in the corner turned out to be the original property boundary, planted deep, unmovable, proof of legal ownership. But more interesting, his notes described the water line in detail. County Main 3-4. Copper capped at 12th, pressure good. Tested 6/1983. If he'd capped it properly, that line might still be functional. I borrowed a shovel from a gas station. The clerk gave it to me when I explained I'd return it, and spent 2 hours excavating the northeast corner. At 11 feet down, my shovel hit metal. I cleared dirt carefully, exposing a brass cap on a copper line, green with age, but intact. "Is that it?" Emma peered into the hole. "That's our water. If it worked. If the county hadn't shut it off. If 34 years hadn't corroded the interior. I spent the last of our cash, $14, on a pipe wrench and a pressure gauge at a hardware store that let me use their as-is bin. The clerk, a young guy with tattoos snaking up both arms, asked what I was building. Trying to finish what someone else started. He threw in a roll of plumber's tape for free. Good luck, man. Back at the shed with Emma watching from a safe distance, I attached the pressure gauge and slowly opened the cap. Water pressure climbed. 10 psi, 20, 40, 60. The line held. No leaks. Morris Welker had built something that lasted. Does this mean we can have a sink? Emma asked. Eventually. First, we need to figure out how to get the water from down there. I pointed at the hole. To up here. I pointed at the shed. How did he plan to do it? I checked his notes. There's supposed to be a pipe run up through the floor, right? I traced the diagram. And there, where Emma's cardboard shelf stood, we moved it aside and examined the floorboards. One board looked different, slightly newer, with visible screw heads instead of nails. I removed the screws carefully. Beneath, a capped PVC pipe, 2 inches in diameter, running down through the floor and into the ground. Morris Welker had roughed in the plumbing. He'd planned every step. He'd just never gotten to step 47. That night I read more of his ledger by flashlight while Emma slept. His handwriting grew shakier toward the end. The final entry, dated December 1989, called Susan again. No answer. Maybe tomorrow. Susan, his daughter, the one who never came home. I thought about Emma, sleeping in her cardboard room, 7 years old and brave beyond measure. I thought about the choice Susan had made, or hadn't made. I thought about second chances and how Morris Welker had built one from yellow pine and hope, and how we'd inherited it for $10. Outside, an owl called. Rain began again, softer this time, finding fewer holes. Chapter 4, Building with What We Have. The first repair required no money, just time and nerve. I waited for a dry morning, then climbed onto the roof with a bundle of salvaged metal patches and the roofing screws Morris had left behind. The surface proved treacherous. Rusted panels that bent under my weight, gaps wide enough to fall through. Emma sat below, holding the ladder steady and narrating my progress like a sports commentator. He's reaching for the big hole now. Will he make it? It's very dramatic. Less commentary, more ladder holding. Roger that. I patched 6 major holes that first day, overlapping metal sheets and ceiling seams with roofing cement I'd found in a partially full bucket. Not elegant, but functional. By evening, the interior stayed noticeably drier when rain returned. Day 2, the collapsed corner. I couldn't rebuild it properly without lumber, but I could stabilize it enough to prevent further damage. Using Morris's hand saw and salvaged 2x4s from the debris pile, I braced the sagging wall with diagonal supports, screwing them into studs I located by tapping walls and listening for solid wood. Why are you hitting the wall? Emma asked. I'm listening for studs. What do studs sound like? Different than empty space. Come here, try it. I handed her a hammer. She tapped experimentally, ear pressed against metal. When she hit a stud, her eyes widened. It's more solid. Exactly, that's where the bones are. She spent an hour mapping studs, marking them with chalk. By afternoon, we had a complete diagram of the shed's skeleton. Morris had built on 16-inch centers, exactly like his notes claimed. Every measurement accurate, every detail considered. I found the oak branch that had caused the collapse still partially wedged in the corner. 2 feet in diameter, heavy as concrete, it had punched through the roof and caved in the wall. I couldn't move it alone, but I could cut it into manageable pieces. The handsaw blade, once I'd sharpened it on a concrete block, proved adequate. I worked in 30-minute sessions, cutting through green oak while Emma collected wood chips in a bucket. By the 3rd day, I'd reduced the branch to sections I could lift. We stacked them outside. Firewood for winter if we lasted that long. Are we going to stay all winter? Emma asked, reading my thoughts. That's the plan. What if it gets too cold? Then we figure out heat. I pointed to a section of wall. Morris's notes mention a wood stove. We just have to find it. We found it that evening buried under the collapsed section. A cast iron Franklin stove, dented but intact, with a flue pipe still attached. It took both of us dragging, and 2 hours of curse words, muted while Emma helped, to move it to the center of the shed. The flue needed a hole through the roof, which meant more climbing, more patches, more improvisation. But that night, using wood scraps and some newspaper I'd saved, I lit our first fire. Heat radiated off cast iron, filling the space with warmth that made Emma laugh out loud. We have fire! She danced around it. Like actual pioneers. Careful, don't get too close. She settled on her sleeping bag, rabbit in her lap, face glowing orange. Dad, are you happy? The question caught me off guard. Happy? 8 months ago, happiness seemed like a memory from someone else's life. Before the layoffs, before the medical bills, before we lost the apartment. But here in a rusty shed warmed by a salvaged stove with my daughter safe and dry, something like happiness flickered. I'm getting there, kiddo. Me too. Days blurred into work sequences. I patched more roof holes. I cleared the outhouse, making it functional if not pleasant. I ran a hose from the county water line to a 50-gallon drum I'd found in a roadside trash pile, giving us running water. Cold, but water. Emma helped with everything. Holding tools, fetching supplies, testing repairs by jumping on floorboards to see if they held. We learned the shed's rhythms. Morning light through the eastern gaps. Afternoon heat trapped under metal. Evening sounds. Insects. Distant traffic. The oak branch creaking overhead. The place had moods, like Morris's letter suggested. On windy nights, metal walls sang harmonic frequencies. During rain, percussion echoed in surround sound. A week into repairs, a truck stopped on the road. A man in his 70s wearing coveralls and a John Deere cap walked up the driveway. I intercepted him halfway, positioning myself between him and the shed. Help you? I kept my voice level. Name's Bill Henderson. Live down the road a piece. He studied the shed, the patches, the stovepipe poking through the roof. Heard someone bought Morris's place. Didn't expect to see actual work happening. We're making it livable. We? He spotted Emma watching from the doorway. His expression shifted. Surprise, concern, assessment. You're living here? With a kid? We're managing. That shed was condemned by the county in '93. Structurally unsound. It's sounder than it was last week. He circled the property slowly, examining my patches, testing the support braces, checking the stovepipe clearance. Professional evaluation. I tensed, ready for judgment, demands to leave, calls to child services. Instead, he nodded. You're doing it right. Bracing the corners first, sealing the roof, establishing heat. That's the order Morris would have done it. You knew him. Helped him pour the foundation. Told him a shed was a stupid place to start a house. He smiled slightly. He proved me mostly wrong. That floor's still solid because he built it right. He studied Emma again. How old's your daughter? 7. School? We're working on it. A lie. I'd been avoiding that question. Enrollment meant addresses, paperwork, questions I couldn't answer yet. Henderson pulled a business card from his pocket. I run a small construction company. Nothing fancy, mostly residential repairs. You need work? I stared at the card. I'm not licensed for anything. I didn't ask for credentials, I asked if you need work. You can obviously handle tools. And I need someone for basic labor. 15 an hour, under the table, flexible schedule. He gestured at the shed. Gives you money for materials, interested? The card felt like possibility. Yes, thank you. Start Monday, 7 a.m. Address is on there. He walked back toward his truck, paused. And get that kid enrolled in school. Bridgeport Elementary takes transfers, just need proof of residence. I don't have... Tax auction record is proof of residence. Courthouse can print you a copy. He climbed into his truck. See you Monday. We watched him drive away. Emma emerged from the doorway. Is he going to make us leave? No. I looked at the card, at the shed, at my daughter who'd grown up too fast in 8 months. I think he just gave us a chance. That night, we ate dinner by stove light. Canned soup heated in a pot. Crackers that had survived the day. Outside, the oak tree whispered in evening wind, dropping acorns that drummed on metal. The sound reminded me of Morris's letter. Plant them. Something should grow here. Tomorrow I'd start. Tonight we had heat, water, walls. We had a chance. And for the first time since everything fell apart, I believed we might actually make it. Chapter 5. The Hidden Blueprint. The courthouse clerk remembered me. She produced the tax auction record with a knowing smile. You're really doing this. Trying. Morris would have liked that. She stamped the document. For school enrollment, this proves residency. But fair warning. The district's going to ask questions about living conditions. The shed's getting better. I don't doubt it, just... She lowered her voice. Be prepared for a visit from child services. It's routine when enrollment raises flags. Make sure the place looks safe. I thanked her and drove to Bridgeport Elementary, a brick building that had educated generations. The registrar, Mrs. Pacheco, reviewed Emma's paperwork with practiced efficiency. When she reached the address line, parcel 19-04227, rural Route 7, her eyebrows rose. The Welker property? Yes, ma'am. Is the structure habitable? We're working on it. It has heat, water, stable floors, weatherproof roof. Not entirely true yet, but close enough. She studied Emma, who sat quietly with her rabbit. Honey, do you like your new house? Emma nodded seriously. We have a stove and everything. Mrs. Pacheco made a note. She can start tomorrow. Bus stops at the end of rural Route 7 at 7:45 a.m. She handed me a folder. Supply list, emergency contacts, lunch program application. The lunch program is free for families meeting income requirements. We'd qualify. I figured. No judgment, just acknowledgement. Welcome to Bridgeport, Emma. You'll be in Mrs. Chen's second grade class. Emma gripped her rabbit tighter, but nodded. On the drive back, she asked, will the other kids know we lived in the car? Does it matter? I don't know. Then don't worry about it. You're a kid who lives in a house that's still being built. That's a cooler story. She considered this. Can I tell them about the secret compartment? Tell them whatever you want. Monday morning split into parallel universes. I dropped Emma at the bus stop. She climbed aboard with visible terror and invisible courage, then drove to Henderson Construction. Bill put me to work demolishing an old deck, physical labor that required muscle over skill. I worked through lunch, earning hours. By 3 p.m., I had $75 cash. Emma's bus dropped her at 3:30. She ran toward the shed with artwork flapping in her hand. I made a drawing. Mrs. Chen said it was very detailed. The picture showed our shed, labeled with proud arrows. Door, roof I helped fix, stove, my room, secret floor. She'd drawn us inside, stick figures with smiles. It's perfect, I told her. She asked where I lived before. What did you say? I said we were traveling and now we found the right place. She looked up. Is that okay? That's perfect. If this restoration story has you hooked hit-like, it helps us bring more lost places back to life. Chapter 6. When the storm hits November came with dropping temperatures. I insulated the walls using pink fiberglass rolls Henderson let me buy at cost, stapling them between studs and covering them with thin plywood panels from a demolition job. Not drywall, but better than bare metal. Emma helped measure and mark cuts, her math improving with practical application. The shed transformed gradually. My corner became an actual room divided by a curtain. We built shelves from scrap lumber. I installed a salvaged propane camp stove for cooking, vented through a window opening. The floor, swept daily, developed worn paths showing our routines. But the collapsed corner remained unfixable without major lumber and roofing materials. A $1,000 problem I couldn't solve on $15 an hour. I cordoned it off with warning tape, marking it as future work. Then the weather forecast changed everything. Major system moving in, the radio announcer declared. Severe thunderstorms Wednesday through Friday. Potential for damaging winds. Heavy rain. Residents should secure outdoor items and prepare for possible power outages. Wednesday dawned gray and ominous. I worked a Henderson job until noon, then rushed home, reinforcing every patch, doubling the tarp coverage over the collapsed corner, moving anything water-sensitive to the center of the shed. Emma watched from the doorway, sensing my tension. It's just a storm, right? Yeah, just a big one. The rain started at 4 p.m. Not gradually, all at once like someone opened a valve. Within an hour, water found every weakness, gaps and patches, seams I'd thought sealed, the entire vulnerable corner where tarp met damaged roof. Leaks multiplied. I placed buckets, pots, even Emma's school art supplies container, each one creating its own percussion note. Dad, Emma pointed to the cordoned corner. Water streamed through the tarp, pooling on the floor. It's getting worse. The floor sagged visibly under pooling water. I grabbed more tarps, climbing onto the roof in sideways rain, wind nearly knocking me off. I couldn't see properly, couldn't aim the staple gun, couldn't do anything except drape more plastic and pray it held. It didn't. By midnight, the corner section collapsed further, roof panels peeling away, wall studs cracking with sounds like gunshots. Water poured through the breach. Our supply shelves got soaked. Emma's school folder floated past like a boat. We need to move, I shouted over the storm. Grab your backpack. Where are we going? Good question. The Civic offered no real shelter from a storm this size. The Henderson job site was miles away. The outhouse, absurd. We were trapped in a failing shed with nowhere to go. Then I remembered Morris's foundation notes. Crawl space access, south wall, 24, hatch for plumbing maintenance, the floorboards. If Morris had built solid foundations, there might be dry space underneath. I found the hatch near the stove, hidden under our sleeping mats. 3 feet square, secured with rusty hinges. I yanked it open. Below, darkness, but also shelter, the space between ground and floor, protected by Morris's 4-foot foundation walls. Down there, Emma's eyes were huge. Just until the storm passes, it'll be drier than up here. I lowered her first, backpack and rabbit, then grabbed emergency supplies, flashlight, water bottles, the waterproof container with important papers. The crawl space smelled of earth and old wood, but it was dry. We huddled together, listening to the storm rage above, water dripping through floorboards but not enough to flood.